Question number 4. Why do you do what you do?
Because I can't do anything else.
Yeah.
That's a really simple answer 35 years later. I saw a difference in the nature of what ADHD is in a 6-year-old child in 1989.
Yeah.
I was the best term I've ever had for a job. I was a milieu manager. A milieu is a therapeutic environment. If you go look up the word.
Okay.
I've never been a milieu. That's the only one time in my life I've been a milieu manager.
Milieu manager. Okay.
So I was the manager of this ADHD summer day treatment program in 1989, and we were using a cutting edge therapy at that time. We used behavior modification theory with a ton of behaviors that the kids would be checked on every 30 minutes. We had to say a positive in the environment to one of the children every 5 to 10 seconds. So it's
affirmations
all the time to these children. Okay,
you're wanting to change the thoughts that they have.
We wanted to surround them with
positivity.
Yeah, we wanted them surrounded with it. Now, and so I was in the reward games. They would get certain points and they'd get to play certain games. Well, it's one child would want to play a card sort game with me. 100 cards in this game, 50 pairs. We lay them out on the floor and we flip them over. Right. He consistently would get 40 to 45 pairs every time I played him. I'm 26, 27 years old. I'm like, how are you doing this? And he just simply looked at me and he said, I take pictures. I'm like, what do you mean you take pictures? I take pictures of the cards.
In his mind.
Right. So here's a 6-year-old with a photographic memory who was a behavioral nightmare. Threw chairs, bit kids, highly impulsive, spit on kids.
Yeah.
We never would have seen his photographic memory.
Yeah.
And it clicked on, Phil, a little bitty window in me that something's off here. We're going to miss this. That's not okay with me.
Yeah.
And I was a very young counselor at the time. And I began to learn about ADHD at that point. And I began to put the building blocks together. And guided by providence and divine intervention as much as anything. So in the 90s, I learned neurological and developmental theory along the lines of learning. I then began to learn about trauma and treating post-traumatic stress using EMDR and other techniques. I then began to look at mindfulness in the early 2000s about how it could make a difference. I was experimenting this whole time with clients, and I say experimenting in the most clinically safe of ways, but we were doing things to try to make sense of it, ADHD, because there was so much challenge in it. And so why do I do what I do now? It's 99% of my work for 35 years.
Yeah.
I don't know of another professional counselor who is zeroed in on one condition. And that wasn't a plan.
But at some point you had a fascination or a desire or a real locked on kind of passion for psychology and passion for the human mind and the human experience before you locked into this 6-year-old child, right?
Right. So that's a good lead in to that. Yes. Why do I work with children? Why did I work with ADHD, or why did I work with psychology? Because my brother had an onset of paranoid schizophrenia at 19 years old, and I was 15. And I was home with my parents, and I had to become the social worker. I had to become the added parent in there to help with horribly disruptive behavior. And my dad's side of the family, my dad was an identical twin, and his twin, Ernest, was paranoid schizophrenic as well, and Ernest was a savant pianist. He could play piano at the age of 8. I have a copy of a program of his 3rd symphony he wrote when he was 23 years old. Playing that in a USO hall in Richmond, Texas. The tragedy to my Uncle Ernest's life is that he was gay, and it was not acknowledged or accepted by my family. He moved to Seattle in the mid-60s, and he died in 1984 of pneumonia, which we now believe was AIDS. And I have about 11 or 12 pages of music that he wrote in the 60s We have no idea where all this music ever went.
Oh, wow.
So it's been one of my quests to go back and find that at some point. But where was my onset in psychology? My brother's onset of schizophrenia.
Yeah. One to support your
It
parents.
just set an intrigue space in me. Now, at 18 years old, I had a contract to sign to become an airplane mechanic at a hobby airport in Houston, Texas.
Really?
Because I did not believe I was smart. I was horribly disruptive. In my book, Focus Forward, you'll read the story in the first 20 pages, how my younger brother is 4 years younger than me, who was a valedictorian of our high school, went to our high school, and was walking down the hall in his freshman year, and I heard a priest say, is that not another Ochoa? And the priest standing next to him said, don't worry, that's a smart one.
Oh.
So I was a highly disrupted student who was very passionate about what I did, but I had a very hard time learning.
Yeah.
My mother typed my papers as I walked behind her because I couldn't get my thoughts out on paper. I'm an accomplished author now. I think I'm thriving.
You figured it out.
So why did I get into psychology? Family disruption. But Mrs. Loisy in the 7th grade, and this is, I think, in the book too, made a statement at that time in the early 70s. There were 3.2 billion people in the world, and she said they are all different. And I had the intriguing thought, if I work with people, I'll never get bored. Yeah. And it's turned to be true. Every new client that comes in has a different psychological map.
Oh, heck
and
yeah.
It fascinates me.
Heck yeah.
So in my own ADD, it keeps me focused.
Yeah.